Hiya, this is Maya, and I am so jazzed for ESO in 2024. Gold Road has just been announced, and I've been going over all the details to clarify what's coming, what isn't, why this is so exciting, and just put it all into context and make sure you guys are up to speed. There are some inescapable spoilers about the Necrom story, but it is everywhere at this point, so I'm taking Zos's lead and talking about it. The new zone is the West Wield, as predicted, with Skingrad as the hub city. If you never played Oblivion, Skingrad is one of the big locations in that game, full of memorable stories and characters, a beautiful setting of this high medieval European city with stone walls and wooden buildings, kind of a tourist vibe, lots of wealthy people strolling about, and a huge vineyard right outside the gates. It looks like Zos have really made an effort to do this place justice. It looks gorgeous, not just the city, but the West Wield itself. And it's probably no coincidence that this beloved location comes along for the 10th anniversary of ESO and the 30th anniversary of the Elder Scrolls series. Every trick and technique from the last few years, the stunning architecture of High Isle, the thick atmospheric lighting of Apocrypha, the incredible jungle environments of Galen, and a whole bunch of cool assets and animations, they're all here alongside all the new stuff. I thought Zos really gave themselves a challenge after Apocrypha. The zone was so incredible, and it seemed like whatever came after it was bound to disappoint. But with nothing but looks to go on so far, I've got to say, this looks spectacular. It is great to see the studio so confident in itself, and to see such gorgeous production value lavished on this game that we love. Apart from the city of Skingrad itself, we'll be visiting the West Wield, which is filled with its autumnal colour palette, lush forest, and dotted with Ayleid ruins. The Colovian Highlands, the northern area up near Coral, a more rocky and hilly area. The Valenwood annexation, where renegade Bosmer called the Recollection have established a new settlement, and this crazy jungle has sprung up overnight. There's also this scorched area which seems to be called the Wildburn. And a ton of Ayleid ruins and locations. They're right there in the artwork and loom over the entire chapter, so expect these to be a regular destination and to play an important role in the story. Speaking of story, weird things are happening in the zone, all connected to the freeing of Ithalia from captivity. This Daedric prince was utterly unknown until Necrom. We still know very little about her, and she probably knows even less. It looks like the story is going to be primarily concerned with finding her, maybe helping her recover her memory of who she is and what she's capable of, before the inevitable reckoning with the Daedra who imprisoned her. Dun, dun, dun. It'll be really interesting to lift the lid on the Daedric princes by getting to hang out with one of them in a different way. It looks like exactly the kind of world building Zos have done before, with things like Elsewhere, Murkmire and Apocrypha, where they took vague and exotic hints made in other games about these areas and brought them to life on screen in a way which works and makes sense. It's not as easy as they make it look. They are literally creating a brand new Daedric prince. Kind of a big deal. And it will be interesting to see how they realize this character and how they explain her absence from games set much further in the future. It's another aspect of this release which is super ambitious, and I'm so there for it. We've already got a second video coming up specifically diving into the story and the lore, and theorizing about what we might see. There will be some familiar faces like Baragon, Laramil, Fenorian, Mizzix Thunderboots, and various others. A cool new creature a bit like a manticore from classical mythology, what looks like a new group of Dremora who may be followers of Ithalia, wearing armor with this crystalline effect that seems to be her thing. Of course, there's also a new trial called Lucent Citadel which may feature these guys. Either way, expected to be connected to this story as well as the dungeon DLC coming in March. But before we get into that, there's another massive thing about this year's chapter. The new system coming in 2024 is called Scribing, The good news for those who wanted spellcrafting for so many years is that Scribing is the version of it that exists at this point in the timeline. 1,000 years later, it will have been refined and evolved into the fully fledged system depicted in Test 4, Oblivion. The even better news is that this is not spellcrafting, which in Oblivion was incredibly busted. In a single-player sandbox, that's okay. But the people who wanted this in ESO, an MMO with a major PvP component, probably didn't realize the pandemonium they were wishing on themselves. The more you think about this, the more of a smart move it seems by ZOS. And they're rolling it out slowly to avoid any class imbalance and to make sure it all works as intended before adding it to, potentially, every skill line. Initially, it's going to Weapon, Guild and World skill lines, so things like Dual Wield, Destruction Staff, Mage's Guild, Soul Magic, and so on. There will be one new ability per skill line, possibly more, and we will be able to customize that ability in a number of ways using a grimoire, the core template for the ability, which cannot be changed. Up to 3 scripts, which are a bit like green enchanting runestones in that they add certain effects like fire, damage over time, and lifesteal to that ability. For example, this footage shows the same ability scribed in various different ways. The basic move is the same, but what it does under the hood can be changed. And third, inks, which is the currency we use to make or change a scribing ability. And finally, there's styling, which allows us to change the colors of our abilities. This looks like it will be available across all abilities in that skill line, not just the one scribing ability that's in there. But it's unclear whether every skill in the game is going to be eligible for this at launch. It would be weird if Arcanist could make the Fate Carver beam red, for example. We're told there will be 22 stars at launch, all available to earn in-game and not from the Crown Store, which is great! I expect we may get some in the cash shop down the road. I kinda hope not, but it's classy that they're not doing it straight away. Many studios would just go straight for our wallets with something like this. Like all new systems that come with a chapter, this will not be base game. You will need to own Gold Road to use Scribing. We can't be absolutely sure about all these details because it's still 5 months away and ZOS are giving themselves room to make tweaks, which is exactly what you want to do. I also think it's cool that they're doing this at all, giving its potentially game-breaking implications. It's another really ambitious move, and I'm really happy they found a way to do this for us, so it's not just cosmetic, but doesn't throw balance out of the window. Fingers crossed that it's a success. By the way, this could be one of the reasons hybridization happened. I've gone on the record many times on this channel, in fact, both criticizing and defending hybridization with its various pros and cons. But one point I've always made is that this was a huge overhaul, which they didn't have to do, and they never really explained why they went through with it. Streamlining the combat system to clear the path for additional customization like this may have been part of their thinking. I don't know, but balancing a system like Scribing without hybridization in place seems like it would be 10 times the nightmare. Speaking of which, in the pre-reveal, Rich Lambert said they're apparently not quite done with hybridization and are planning to tweak foods and potions at some point. Those are the headlines for the chapter coming this year. It looks like a big and ambitious release, which is exactly what you'd want on the 10th anniversary. It is perhaps a little surprising that there isn't a more obvious connection with the base game story and a feeling of coming full circle. But I actually kinda love that they're marking the occasion with such a bold statement about the game's future, rather than giving us warm and fuzzy nostalgia. It will also help keep this chapter evergreen. If someone plays it 2 or 5 years from now, the whole anniversary thing won't make much sense. And that's got to be a factor when you're breaking a story like this. So, what about the rest of the year? Well, first, there's Update 41, the Dungeon DLC coming in March. 2 dungeons as usual, Oathsworn Pit and Bedlam Vale. Both sound pretty unpleasant, and although we're not doing the year-long adventure format anymore, these dungeons will be part of the build-up to the Gold Road story, just as Scribes of Fate was last year. So expect things like Daedra, Bosma, Ithalia, Ayleid Ruins, maybe all of the above. Update 41 will also include the prologue quest for the chapter and various quality of life improvements. The preview stream for that is coming real soon, on January the 26th. The patch will hit PTS on the 29th and go live 6 weeks later on March the 11th. Ninja Pulse will be there throughout, updating all of our guides and keeping you posted ahead of any important changes. Gold Road itself won't be out until June. The current launch date is June the 3rd, and then later in the year we're getting update 43 with more quality of life stuff and a big housing feature, which we don't know much about yet, but we're definitely excited to hear more about. And finally, they've teased a big PvP thing for update 44 arriving near the end of the year. Again, we don't know anything about this except that it is apparently not Cyrodiil. Something to get you pondering. The 2 new companions will also be coming with update 44. There will almost certainly be more than this, guys, but it's such a long way off and Zos really want us to focus on Gold Road right now. A couple of other things that came out of this. The devs are looking at ways to reduce inventory clutter. It is something they've been doing more of recently, and Rich mentioned that stackable siege is coming. Great news for the Ninja Pulse Guild Bank. As I already mentioned, they've got a couple more hybridization things left. Food and potions were specifically mentioned. But best of all, Rich confirmed that the devs intend to continue the recent trend of keeping the combat system stable, with no major disruptions like we had several of in 2022. There will be some changes, of course, but in his words, they'll be more about tuning, tweaking, quality of life improvements. This time last year, I was finishing my massive review of 2022, a 2-part video which was pretty critical of Zos's performance in that year. Buggy launches, slow fixes, Tales of Tribute, Oakensoul, Update 35, and a bunch of decisions which made a ton of players quit. It was tough, and I made the case that we needed a fantastic year in 2023 to recover. I think we got it. Last year was a really strong showing by Zos, and although it's way too early to make any predictions about 2024, what we've seen in the reveal is encouraging. I would love to hear something, anything, about performance improvements, since their 2023 plans for a server re-architecture didn't pan out. But there's a lot to be excited about, and not just the new chapter. Another really interesting thing Rich mentioned is that the last 9 years included a lot of figuring out exactly what this enormous game could be, fixing issues from launch and getting everything to work as it should. With that behind them, the devs want to focus on polish. So it's hard for me not to view last year and this year as a statement of intent from a studio that seems right now to be brimming with ambition and creativity. Here's to the next 10 years.